Imagine standing in a land where towering mountains meet tropical jungles, where volcanoes overlook fertile valleys, and where every river promises life. Thousands of years before Europeans crossed the Atlantic, this land was already home to remarkable civilizations. They built massive cities, tracked the movement of planets, traded across vast distances, and created cultures that would shape history for thousands of years. This is not just the story of one country. It is the story of how countless civilizations rose, fell, and transformed into the nation we now call Mexico. Long before the pyramids of Egypt were ancient, small groups of hunter-gatherers were already living across what is now Mexico. Around 10,000 years ago, they slowly shifted from hunting wild animals to growing crops like maize, beans, and squash. Agriculture changed everything. Instead of constantly moving, people settled down. Villages grew larger. Trade began. Communities became more organized. Over centuries, these simple farming settlements laid the foundation for some of the greatest civilizations in the Americas. The first great civilization to emerge was the Olmecs around 1500 BC. Often called the mother civilization of Mesoamerica, the Olmecs developed ideas that later cultures would adopt and improve. They built ceremonial centers, organized long-distance trade, and created one of the earliest writing systems in the region. Today, they are best remembered for their enormous stone heads. Some weighed more than 20 tons and were carved without iron tools or wheeled vehicles. Even today, archaeologists continue debating exactly how these massive monuments were transported across forests and rivers. Eventually, the Olmec cities declined. Rivers changed course, trade weakened, and political power faded. But although their civilization disappeared, their knowledge survived. Far to the southeast, another civilization was preparing to reach extraordinary heights. The Maya did far more than build impressive pyramids. They became brilliant astronomers, mathematicians, architects, and engineers. By carefully observing the skies, they developed remarkably accurate calendars and could predict eclipses and seasonal changes with impressive precision. Their cities stretched across southern Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, Honduras, and El Salvador. Rather than forming one giant empire, the Maya built dozens of independent city-states. Places like Tikal, Palenque, Calakmul, and Chichen Itza constantly competed for power and influence. This competition encouraged innovation, but it also fueled endless warfare. Kings fought for territory, prestige, and valuable trade routes. Massive temples celebrated military victories while prisoners were captured for religious ceremonies. For centuries, the Maya flourished. Then, something changed. Between the 8th and 9th centuries, many of the great southern Maya cities were abandoned. Monument construction stopped. Royal dynasties disappeared. Entire urban centers slowly returned to the jungle. There was no single cause. Evidence suggests that prolonged droughts reduced harvests. Population growth placed enormous pressure on farmland. Forests were cleared faster than they could recover. Political rivalries intensified, leading to continuous warfare. Together, these problems created a chain reaction that many cities simply could not survive. While the Maya dominated the south, another extraordinary city was rising in central Mexico. Its name was Teotihuacan. At its peak, Teotihuacan may have housed more than 100,000 people, making it one of the largest cities anywhere on Earth during its time. Its enormous Avenue of the Dead connected spectacular pyramids dedicated to the sun and moon. Merchants arrived from across Mesoamerica, bringing obsidian, jade, feathers, and luxury goods. Yet surprisingly, we still know very little about the people who built it. They left behind magnificent architecture, but almost no written records explaining who ruled the city or why it eventually collapsed. Around the 6th century, signs of unrest appeared. Important buildings were burned. Elite residences were destroyed. Trade declined. The great metropolis slowly emptied, leaving behind one of archaeology's greatest mysteries. After centuries of shifting power, another civilization emerged. The Toltecs became famous as skilled warriors and influential builders. Their capital at Tula inspired later generations, especially one rising people who admired the Toltecs so deeply that they claimed to be their descendants. Those people were the Aztecs. Unlike many earlier civilizations, the Aztecs arrived relatively late, but they expanded with astonishing speed. In 1428, 3 powerful cities formed the Triple Alliance, creating an empire that rapidly spread across central Mexico. Their capital, Tenochtitlan, was unlike anything the world had ever seen. Built on an island in the middle of Lake Texcoco, the city was connected by long causeways and supplied with fresh water through sophisticated engineering. Floating gardens called chinampas, allowed farmers to grow crops throughout the year, feeding hundreds of thousands of people. When Spanish explorers first saw Tenochtitlan, many compared it to the greatest cities of Europe. The Aztecs collected tribute from conquered regions and maintained power through military strength, strategic alliances, and religion. Human sacrifice formed an important part of their religious beliefs. To the Aztecs, these ceremonies helped maintain the balance of the universe and honoured powerful gods. They also reinforced the authority of the empire and demonstrated its strength to allies and rivals alike. For decades, the empire appeared unstoppable. Then everything changed. In 1519, a Spanish expedition led by Hernán Cortés arrived on Mexico's eastern coast. The Spaniards brought steel weapons, horses, firearms, and unfamiliar military tactics. But technology alone did not decide the outcome. Many indigenous communities had long resented Aztec rule and chose to ally with Cortés against their powerful rivals. After months of fierce fighting, disease, and political intrigue, Tenochtitlan fell in 1521. The once magnificent capital was destroyed. On its ruins, the Spanish built what would become Mexico City. Yet the most devastating weapon was invisible. Diseases such as smallpox spread rapidly through populations that had never encountered them before. Entire communities lost leaders, families, and traditions within a single generation. Historians estimate that millions of indigenous people died during the first century after European contact. Spanish rule transformed every aspect of life. Catholic churches replaced many older temples. Silver mines, especially those at Zacatecas, generated enormous wealth for the Spanish Empire. New trade routes connected Mexico with Europe and Asia, making New Spain one of the world's most valuable colonies. At the same time, strict social divisions placed Europeans at the top, while indigenous peoples and those of mixed ancestry faced discrimination and limited opportunities. For nearly 3 centuries, colonial rule continued. Then events across the Atlantic changed everything. In 1808, Napoleon invaded Spain, creating political chaos throughout the empire. Inspired by growing demands for freedom, the priest Miguel Hidalgo y Costilla issued the famous Cry of Dolores in 1810, calling on Mexicans to rise against colonial rule. The struggle lasted more than a decade. It was costly, violent, and deeply divided, but in 1821 Mexico finally achieved independence. Freedom, however, did not bring stability. Governments rose and fell with alarming speed. Conservatives and liberals struggled over the country's future. In 1836, Texas separated from Mexico. A decade later, war with the United States ended in defeat, forcing Mexico to surrender nearly half of its territory under the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. Even after that devastating loss, conflict continued. During the 1860s, France attempted to establish a new empire in Mexico. Although French forces eventually occupied Mexico City, one earlier victory became a lasting national symbol. On May 5, 1862, Mexican troops defeated a larger French army at the Battle of Puebla. That victory is still remembered today as Cinco de Mayo, celebrating determination in the face of overwhelming odds. By the late 19th century, President Porfirio Diaz modernized railroads, industry, and infrastructure. Economic growth accelerated, but wealth remained concentrated among a small elite while millions of ordinary citizens continued living in poverty. Growing inequality eventually erupted into the Mexican Revolution in 1910. For nearly a decade, revolutionary leaders, rival armies, and political factions fought across the country. The conflict reshaped Mexico's political system and eventually led to a new constitution that expanded land reform, workers' rights, and national sovereignty. The road toward modern democracy remained difficult, but Mexico slowly rebuilt itself. Today, Mexico is one of the world's largest economies and one of its richest cultural centers. Its ancient pyramids attract millions of visitors every year. Its cuisine, music, literature, and traditions are celebrated across the globe, from the Olmecs and Maya to the Aztecs. From Spanish conquest to revolution and renewal, every generation left its mark on the nation. Mexico's history is not simply a sequence of victories and defeats. It is a story of resilience, a story of civilizations that refuse to disappear, a story of people who rebuilt their future again and again. And every stone pyramid, every colonial cathedral, and every crowded street in modern Mexico City reminds us that history never truly vanishes. It simply becomes the foundation upon which the next generation builds.